My guest today is the eminent Czech pianist, Ivan Moravec. Mr. Moravec, in playing the piano, in my own opinion, perhaps the easiest part about playing the piano is the simple notes, just learning the notes. And there are countless pianists running around today who apparently have relatively little difficulty with the notes. And the qualities about yourself which make you one of the few pianists deserving of international stature is the fact that there is so much more to your playing than just the notes. I mean, they're all there. You're an individual performer. Regardless of what repertoire you play and all the times that I've heard you, you seem to have exactly the correct style for playing. And what is it about you, this approach, that just makes you so fantastic in this area? The fingers, the notes are no problem for you.
Well, even the notes are a problem for me. You know, don't underestimate. I think just to learn a piece and have an absolute security and sureness in memory is a merit. Of course, it starts to be more and more difficult with more demands, which a player starts to apply on himself. The more the player wants, the more difficult life he prepares for himself.
Right, right.
Which also includes that a player who has, let's say, high desires in sound or expression is judging himself more severely than just a fast, smooth player.
So you're saying that getting the notes, memorizing the piece is the beginning of it all?
Oh, yes.
And then everything else is step up and step up and step up.
Yes. Well, and of course, by years, you build your ideas of how works and composition should sound. Those ideas change greatly because a good player should always try to have a better idea. You know, it's constantly changing.
Right.
And you are in a way you are hunting your own imagination. And the trouble with this profession is that you never really catch it. You have a sort of ideal imagination, but because of many things, you know, your physical condition, temperature in the hall, your instrument, etc., all disturbing aspects which could occur in a recording studio or in a hall, they just make your life hard.
Right.
But even in the best conditions, you never catch your ideal.
You mentioned two key words, sound and imagination. And I say those are key words because those words, or concepts at least, come into my mind immediately when I hear you. Say, for your recorded performances, the moment that one begins, I can immediately say, this is Ivan Moravec. It seems as if you have reached this level of ability in which there are two people playing. There is the one who is actually physically at the keyboard playing. There is the other who is listening to the fellow playing and saying, it should be this way. And the two are together, and it produces such an individual performance. And how does one handle such remarkable playing like this? Probably an immensely difficult question.
It's a very difficult question. Well, you know, the first demand which I would really have would be a long tone.
Long tone.
Long
right.
tone, you know, because the
you get piano problems. I mean, the way they're building pianos to sustain long tones today.
Right. You know, and perhaps it's a little bit connected with my education. You know, my father was a lawyer. He was not a musician, but he was a good amateur singer and pianist.
Yes.
And the first works which I heard in my childhood were operatic works.
So you're attempting
singing.
to get the singing sound at the piano is what you want.
My biggest love was Enrico Caruso, and He remained for me the greatest singer, you know, because of evident gold in his voice and very truthful expression.
Yes.
I always believe him every word, every note which he sang. I even believed him his sobs in Pagliacci,
Yes.
which is really something, you know, to believe a singer that he is sobbing. In fact, he's not sobbing, you know, he's playing a part.
Exactly.
It's horrible.
Good command of the
Yes.
dramaticism, I should say, that comes across.
Yes, and so this singing aspect, you know, was a deep desire of my own, and knowing that the piano cannot produce a crescendo, and that a pianist cannot make a nice vibrato, forced me perhaps even more to simulate a real legato, because it's only a simulation of.
Well, you do it phenomenally well, and it goes back to what I said at first of being able to identify you immediately upon hearing you. And there are so few pianists today about which one can truthfully make that comment, because you know there are lots of fireballs running around, there are lots of people with good, purely technical control. But what type of individuality do you have? Practically none. There are so few people who do have that individuality. Those are the ones that I personally consider to be a world-class artistry. And what you mentioned of the, should I say, bel canto style on the piano, the singing tone, you produce so remarkably well, as I said, almost as if you are so carefully another person listening to yourself, saying, well, Yvonne, it should merge just like this and just like this, and the effect is fantastic. But what problems do you encounter, say, with pianos in compensating for one that might not have that bel canto ability?
You know, it's sometimes I'm desperate. And I always try to pick up the best instrument which is in the city I come. I am never lazy to see 5 pianos.
Right.
I always try to be friendly with the tuner. And in fact, my friends were always the old tuners which I met in my life were always my friends, because I needed them. You know,
Right.
and in fact, a technician, a tuner, can contribute greatly to the actual condition of the instrument. You know, so I would say that the bad condition of instruments is not only caused by, let's say, worse quality of production,
Yes.
but also by want of people who would maintenance.
Right.
Yes, and because even that profession, I mean, our profession is very much connected with patience. We should be infinitely patient and say every minute is a new minute and every day is a new day, because what was yesterday is not valid today.
Exactly. I tend to agree with you on that, the fact that we do have something of a problem with the new pianos that are made today, but even when a good one is turned out, there's such a lack of people who can service a piano and who knows precisely what to do with it. And that's rather unfortunate. And as you say, it forces you to look over 5, 6, or 7 pianos in whatever city that you may be appearing. But to another subject, shall we say, the situation of musical culture in general today, I have found that so many people, so many of the younger people, are almost totally ignorant of great musicians of the past. You mentioned Caruso. You yourself, a pianist, idolizing and attempting to copy, in the good sense of the word, his type of musicianship and sound on the piano. And I don't think perhaps there are too many youngsters who have never heard of Caruso. They may not know who he is, but they've heard of the name. But so many of the younger people, and when I say younger, I'm speaking, of course, 30s, 40s, and so on, who don't know about such people as Joseph Levine or Godowsky or Hoffman and all. And do you encounter this?
Well, I think that for a development of a young musician, knowing old masters is a conditio sine qua non. It's an absolute condition, you know. And I think that through listening to great masters of the past, you can perhaps more successfully listen to your own playing, which is a basic mean how to improve.
Yes.
Because if the player, if the artist is unable to hear objectively, almost cruelly, what he is doing from the playback, he will never improve.
Very, very great. We certainly agree on this point. Now, in my own collection, I have several thousand recordings. And of course, you know, I cannot expect everyone else to have quite that many. And needless to say, of those several thousands, there are many, many duplications of the same piece. Like Liszt being one of my favorite composer, I have at least 30 different recordings of his first piano concerto. But what I find to be so upsetting are these people who may pick up one recording and listen to it, say, this is it, this is the way it has to be, and perhaps will sit down and copy precisely what they hear, or just pay no attention to investigating other artists and listening around the piece, hearing that it can be played in different ways, and most importantly, investigating for themselves. And I understand that you listen to yourself frequently through recorded means.
Yes.
Is this correct?
I have my tape recorder in my studio where I work, and occasionally I check what is coming out of the instrument, because, you know, that was something which I wanted to say when you have been speaking about a sort of that when you hear me play, you see the physical
self or person.
Yes, but a mind who is checking and judging. You know, this of course happens. On the other hand, judging yourself, your playing, while you are playing, is the most dangerous thing you can imagine.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Because then where is the
Yeah.
spontaneity? Where is the freedom? You know, I wanted to say that, of course, you cannot avoid. If you go through a passage, you know whether it went smoothly or what has happened. But on the other hand, to judge yourself while you are performing too severely, how can you finish the piece? Then if you have high ideals, then you would never finish. You have to be a little bit, to be able to pardon yourself for some mistakes or imperfections. You have to live with your imperfections. Then you will finish the piece.
So you're saying that you should listen to yourself play, but not necessarily analyze yourself.
No, not. You are right.
Okay, fine.
Because analysis is something cold. I mean, brainy.
Calculation,
yes.
shall we say?
And you should live the music, if possible, with much freedom. And this is, of course, another great trouble with our profession, you know, being watched by people, being even disturbed by a mic or by lights, you know, to maintain that sort of, a certain degree of freedom. It's a very hard thing. It also means that a player should be able to arrive at a certain public solitude. His inner concentration should be that strong that he just in one moment is in his own world, small circle, you know, around the instrument.
But you know, when you do that, being in your own world, in your own circle, this is when you communicate most to your audience, because each and every person sitting out there gets the feeling that he is sitting right next to you at this piano and that you're playing just for him.
I am glad you say that, because this is also my conviction that if any person can be highly concentrated, regardless whether he's a speaker or a musician, he draws other
Right,
people in the
exactly.
same degree of deep concentration. I'm glad you said that. And of course, you asked also what I do or what would be my desire with the instrument, you know, long tone, but also very even tones, which is connected with the voicing of
Yes.
hammers, you know. Our problem is then when you play long hours one instrument, you never hit all the notes, let's say 1,000 times.
Yes.
So by hitting a note more frequently, the tone automatically gets more brilliant.
Yes.
And it needs
wearing away the hammers, for
Right.
example, and
Yes,
okay,
it needs an occasional new voicing or brushing or adjustment. And so all the felts, all the hammers should be evenly voiced, that they would produce an evenly brilliant or present sound. This is another condition. If I have every key is something different in weight,
Yes.
this is another subject, weight of the key, you know, and in tone, then where is the freedom?
right.
You just expect that hitting the C, you have to press a little bit more in order to have it even. This is a hell. So if I can with the
Right.
help of a technician prepare the instrument reasonably well, it's a basic situation where I can do something.
Well, I'll say in closing here that for these pitfalls that you mention and describe so vividly in the hell, you do an absolutely marvelous job of overcoming these pitfalls and stops, because regardless of what piano, what type of condition that one will hear you play, it's as if there's this computer in your mind that controls your fingers to the point that if these two notes are uneven, when your fingers touch them, the sound that comes out tells our ears that the notes are even. And that, to me, is one of the most distinctive marks of a true artist, very, very much so. And in discussion of your artistry, I think now is a good time to return back to it, and we'll get back to the piano and hear you playing. Thank you very much for being here.
Not at all.
Okay, fine.
So, that's it.